Well, once again, thank you everybody for coming. It's good to see you all. And I want to also welcome some friends here this evening. My colleagues, Charlotte Pressler and Chris Tumblety from the Bishop's staff are also here with us. Charlotte and Chris, would you like to introduce yourselves to everybody?
Sure thing. So I am Charlotte Pressler. I am the Director of Formation for our diocese, which mostly has to do with anything that has to do with learning. So all aspects of faith formation, as well as our lay licensing program. I know that some of you are interested in that. I also support our congregations in some congregational development. I support our Episcopal camp. I came from there today. And our schools. So lots of really good and fun things. And I am excited to be with you this evening and support your conversation.
Awesome.
And I'm Chris Tumblety, the Director of Communications here at the Diocese, and I have the privilege of working with Jason and Charlotte on a lot of projects, including our newsletter and our website, our social media presence. I also spend a lot of time helping our congregations out with all of their communications aspects, anything, going from our church out into the public. And so, yeah, that's my bailiwick. Back to you, Jason.
Thanks both of you for being here. And one of the reasons why all three of us are here with you today is because I want to make sure all of you recognize that we are here to serve you. We are here to support your ministry and your congregation. So I hope that you will take us up on that invitation to reach out to us when you need us, to let us know how we can resource you. We are also here, all three of us in this session, because we're going to revisit a lot of the material that we covered in the Easter invitation workshop that we did some months ago ahead of Easter to help congregations get ready for that invitation. So the material in that session is so good, in our opinion, humble opinion, that we thought it was worth revisiting. And so we're going to be covering a lot of those things. But because we have a lot to cover this evening, I am going to ask you to hold your questions until we get to a point where we can pause and answer those questions. And I also feel like I should just say thank you for being here, not hanging out with Joe and Donald. Like, that's where you could have been this evening, and instead you're hanging out with Jason, Chris, and Charlotte. So thank you, and all of everybody else here this evening. So with that, let's go ahead and start with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Ever-living God, whose will it is that all should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ, inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and the hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Okay, well, as I mentioned last week, the bishop has announced that we are going to have Invite a Friend season this fall, a whole month between October and November, where congregations are encouraged to pick a Sunday or multiple Sundays so that they can invite their community to the church. This is a great invitation simply because it helps us begin to practice the discipline of inviting others to church. And so I encourage each of you as evangelists, whether you're licensed in the future or not, to have a hand in helping your congregation pick a Sunday and invite others to the church, especially for those of you that are seeking a lay license. Don't complete this course merely for a credential. To be a lay licensed evangelist is to be a leader in your local congregation for evangelism by modeling it and guiding others. So take advantage of this opportunity of the Invite a Friend to Church season to spark your own practice into gear, but also your whole congregation. So with that in mind, we've already spoken about this last week, but this week we're going to go a little bit deeper into the mechanics of invitation. We've talked about knowing our own story, how to share God's story with others. This week, we're going to talk about the mechanics of invitation. And we're going to start with what you can do as individuals Again, we've talked about this but we're going to talk about that even more this week. And secondly, what you can do to help your churches do the work of invitation. And third, we're going to talk about how to engage and retain visitors after they arrive at your church for their first visit. So I invite you to open the chat window and recall a time when you were invited to something new that you hadn't participated in before. How did that feel to you? What was that sensation? Just in a few words, how did that feel? As I've shared with you all before, I love music. I like to play music. I like to listen to music. And I still remember the first time I was invited to a concert. And I felt so honored to be cool enough to be invited to an arena rock concert. Like, wow, that I was on the list of a cool kid if I was invited by a cool kid to go to an arena rock show. But it was also nervous because I thought, but what if they find out I'm a fraud, that I'm not that cool? But it was also elation that I got to go participate in something that I loved. So how did it feel when you were invited to something new? And so let's go ahead and lean into this conversation about inviting visitors for you as individuals. We're talking here specifically about you and others in your congregation, not churches as institutions. The best invitation always is the in-person human invitation. The response rate to a personal direct invite is off the charts in comparison to any other promotional, marketing, communication piece that our church can do to invite folks to church. So we want to spend ample time talking about what it means for you to invite people to church specifically. Well, one of the things that's important to point out that most Americans have some experience with church, whether good or bad. Most Americans have had some experience with church. So as odd or weird as you may feel church practices to others, chances are they are more familiar with church than you think. You aren't inviting them to go visit the planet Mars. You're inviting them to visit a place they have probably been before. You'll remember this slide from last week. You're not invited to cold call people to church. These are not anonymous invites. What I'm encouraging you to do is to make a list of who you know that you could invite to church. This is what I do. When I'm going to invite people to our new church in Ocean Beach, Resurrection, I literally make a list of the people that I know don't have a whole lot going on Sunday mornings, folks that are not busy because they're probably not going to church. And consider, and that's my list of people that I'm going to reach out to, and I'm going to invite them to church. Well, after you've got through that personal list, again, think about who's outside that outer ring out from there. Who are people that you would like to get to know better that you might invite to church? People that you haven't spent maybe as much time with that you would like to spend more time with. And then beyond that, if you get to that third ring, fantastic. If not, no sweat. But if there are people beyond that circle, who else might you invite to church? So a few tips about inviting others to church. The first thing is a physical invitation. It's almost always helpful when you're going to invite someone to come visit church with you to give them something, to give them a reminder of some sort. This can be a handwritten note. It could also be a flyer from your church, a postcard from your church, a bulletin from the last Sunday, but giving them something, a physical invitation, so that they can remember this conversation is really helpful in helping this sink in with folks and take this invitation seriously. The next thing is accompany them to join you at church. This isn't you should go to my church on this Sunday. I may or may not be there. This is, I'm willing to come pick you up and we can drive over together, or I'll meet you in the parking lot. I usually park over in this part of the parking lot, or I'll meet you at the front doors if you're walking. In some way, shape, or form that makes sense to the logistics of your church and your context, accompany that person so that they aren't going into this new experience, this new place as a stranger all by themselves, but with somebody that they know and feel comfortable with. Highly more likely if they don't have to walk in by themselves. And make it personal. You're all familiar with the power of peer suggestions. You see this all the time on, if you're looking for a restaurant on Yelp, or if you're looking for a new product, whether that be a vacuum or sticky notes or a new shirt on Amazon. When you make purchases there, we all look and see what other people have suggested and what they recommend. All of us are familiar with that peer influence, and I am encouraging you to use this here. Why are you inviting this person to this church? Based upon what you love about your church. What is something that is deeply meaningful about your church to you? I know there's a lot of things that you can share because you've all shared your stories with me, and so many of your stories, your own testimonies, have your experience, your holy, sacred experiences that you've had in church. So clearly, church means a lot to you. And saying to your friend that, hey, this is what church means to me, I really think it might mean something new, it's going to go a long way. And chances are that impact, that will have a strong impact on their decision of whether or not to participate. So thinking about this, we're going to take a rapid fire breakout, and we'll split you up into small groups here in a moment. And we'd like you to share with one of your other colleagues in this cohort what you love about your church. What's something that you love with your church? You're going to have probably just one other person in your group, your breakout, but share briefly with them what you love about your church, and they're going to do the same, okay? We'll see you back here in a few minutes. Thanks for coming back. We didn't know if you go check out what Donald and Joe were up to, so we're glad you're here with us. All right, so like I said earlier, part of what we just got done talking about is the personal invitation. And what we want to move to now is ways that you can help your church make a broader invitation to the community around your congregation. And so Chris Tumulty is going to take it from here to walk you through those practices. Chris?
Thank you, Jason. Got to unmute yourself. That's the first step of quality communications, right? So thanks again. Yes, inviting visitors is really an important step. We want to make sure that all of our communications assets coming from our congregations are encouraging folks to join us throughout the season of Invite a Friend Sunday to Sunday. And the first step of that is making sure that our website is up to date and looks pretty, right? We all know that when we're investigating something new, the very first place we're going to check it out is the website. And so our websites need to look modern and clean and available, which includes a welcome message from the leadership or the vestry, something that encourages people to attend and that showcases the breadth and life of your community there at St. So-and-so's. Your service times need to be above the fold or above the scroll. It needs to be apparent the moment somebody hits your website, what time they need to show up to church. Family and children's activities are a wonderful way to share that you are a family-friendly community and that there's a place for young ones in the community. And so if you have active children's ministries, VBS or otherwise, make sure that you use those assets on your website to showcase that it's a family-friendly community, right? And along those lines too, inviting art. There's all kinds of resources on our webpage that will help you guys find art that you can use on your social medias or your website, etc. So other art that you guys can use are pictures of happy parishioners from past events. It doesn't need to be from the previous Sunday. We're talking about the last time you guys had confirmations or baptisms or a wedding, any kind of event that shows your community in a joyful moment, right? So all of these past experiences on your campus are great things that you can share on your website or your social media. If you are at a church that doesn't do a lot of photo taking during services, which there are a lot of us out there that don't do that during our services. Classic art and stained glass are great opportunities. They're very standard and they help show who we are as a community, that we're based in tradition and that we have a breadth of education and life about us. So moving on to social media. So social media, we all know, is a seriously powerful tool for sharing what's happening in our lives and in the lives of others and at our churches, right? This is one of the sole places that we can broadcast our experience to the world as an individual. So our churches need to make sure that we are using captivating headlines. So what is a captivating headline? How about, you know, have you met Jesus? Or what is, where does love come from? Something that prompts an answer that they need to look to you for, right? And so that's an easy way to draw people in. Providing clear and concise information about the services and activities, including how to dress, the time to show up, what to expect, where the parking is. Here at Resurrection and Ocean Beach, our parking is behind the building. If you're new here, you wouldn't know that there's parking spots that you can easily find parking in. And so we make sure that when we're posting things about Resurrection and Ocean Beach, that we note that there's parking in the rear. Makes it easy for new people. So photos, video, or art, anything that you have in your databases of the church that you can show, again, showing the life and ministry of the church, and a call to action. And by a call to action, I mean join us. Attend church on Sunday. Bring a friend. Another aspect about social media that I think is important to note here is that this isn't just the church saying, come one, come all, right? This can also be the church providing its parishioner base or its congregants tools and information on how to invite another person. Because the Invite a Friend season isn't a time where the church itself as an organization invites a friend. It's the congregants, it's the parishioners, it's you guys that are inviting a friend to join you in something that you already love. And so helping to tool your own members and the members of the church with skills to help share and invite folks to church. So before the Invite a Friend to Church season, we want to make sure that we're doing regular invitation posts. You'll see these things starting to come out from the diocese in our newsletter, ways to invite people and resources and tools that will be slowly dripping out over the next few months to help you guys in your endeavors to invite new people to church. So make sure that you're regularly posting, set up a schedule between now and October. What weeks and what days do we want to post about inviting a friend to church to encourage folks to attend over that season, right? Family and children's activities, again, an easy way to showcase that you guys are a family-friendly community. And again, encouraging parishioners to share either the post that's inviting friends to church or the resources that, utilizing the resources that we provide. So after the big season or the Invite a Friend to Church Sunday, whatever your guys' congregation decides on, you want to continue the social media push. You want to show the photos and video of that event. And you want to stretch it out because it is a season and you can continue to use these photos and these assets and the big push towards the Invite a Friend to Church Sunday to help regularly encourage folks to invite people to church. This is supposed to be encouraging a better practice of sharing our church community with others. So our newsletters are one of the most important tools for the membership of the church. If you're subscribed to a newsletter, it means that you're already interested in the organization and what's happening, right? And so this is an opportunity for your church to do a big push over a number of weeks towards invite a friend to church, right? This is an easy way for you to equip the congregants and the parishioners with the tools and the resources that they'll need in order to successfully invite somebody to church, whether that's sharing a personal story or some of the things that Jason mentioned before, accompanying a friend to church, and starting to think through some of the tactics and ways in which we can invite folks into something we love. Yes, thanks, Jason. Signage. So signage is a really important piece when people hit the ground, right? It's often a forgotten piece of a communications package, because we know our buildings, we know where the mop bucket is and where the bathrooms are, and where the extra spoons are in the kitchen, maybe in 3 different drawers, but they're there somewhere, right? And so we need to have signage for newcomers that clearly state where they are and where the key places that they need to go to are, whether that's the sanctuary, the front office, or the bathrooms. It creates a level of comfort where they don't have to, tug on somebody's sleeve and say, "Excuse me, where's the bathroom?" Being able to have agency and being able to find the things yourself gives a degree of comfort and encourages newcomers to feel, a part of the community. Encourage participation. If you notice a newcomer, ask if they would like to fill out a card, and be contacted, and design the signage to be evergreen, right? So that it's not seasonal, it's very static and can live on. Print media. So things on paper, as Jason said, having something physical to hand folks is a really important step in inviting people to church. It's a reminder, it's something to put on the fridge, right? And say, "Oh, that's coming up, we're going to attend that as a family." So when you're designing your welcome cards, make sure there's a friendly message, short and concise, service information, and again, children and family activities, because we always want to make sure that people understand that our churches are family-friendly areas. And then a follow-up card, something to say thank you for attending. You're seen and noticed, and your participation was valued. This is also a great point where you can have an invitation to talk one-on-one, either with a clergy person or with a member of the leadership at the church. And so these are ways of wrapping up or closing the communications loop. You've now invited somebody, they've attended, and you've thanked them for attending, right? So we're going back to this really quick just to, and Jason already showed you this, and it's just to remind you, who would you invite? The 3 circles. When we want to share something that we love, right, we share it with the people directly around us. When I see a brand new show and my partner Aaron and I watch it over the weekend, come Monday, Charlotte Pressler is going to hear that we found this great new show on Netflix, and she hasn't lived life until she's watched, the barbecue pitmasters competition, which a new season's coming out on July 4th, if anybody's interested. And so those personal connections, that's who we want to share what we love with, right? But we can expand that circle further into our neighborhood, to people that maybe we don't have as personal of a connection with, but would like to have a more connection with. Our neighbor 2 doors down, who we wave to as we, drive by to work, as they get their newspaper in the morning or whatnot. Maybe there's an opportunity for deeper and broader relationship with them by inviting them into church. And maybe there's other opportunities for folks that you engage with. All right, so we're moving to our next breakout session. Who can you invite to church? And we're going to break out again in groups of 2, and maybe.
I have your next session to present to you, and it is about, so now you have figured out who you are going to invite, you have sent out your physical invitations, you have worked through your networks, and it is time for the Sunday where everyone is going to arrive to your congregation. And so we're going to talk about how we can engage them once they get there. And as part of that, I want to just name to you that that's an important part of this evangelism class and the idea of becoming a licensed evangelism. Like we all love to learn things and to be in a community like this, but really this license in particular is about putting it into practice. So this Sunday, this Invite a Friend to Church Sunday, is your chance to take your skills here and put them into practice. So I'm really excited about that as the person that reviews all your lay licenses. So the first question is, recall a time when you felt welcomed in a new space, and how did you feel? How did that feel? So you're going to drop a little comment in the chat. Maybe it is just a word about the feeling, or maybe you want to type in a little bit more about what the item was where you were invited in. But a time when you felt welcomed in a new space, and how did that feel? It's funny because when I was reviewing the details for this, a memory popped up for me about it that hadn't occurred to me in a long time. And it was when I moved back from the East Coast to here. And my first Sunday at a congregation that I had attended previously, someone sat next to me in a pew, didn't know me, and at the end of the service said, "Hey, we are going to go and pack up all of these coats that we have collected. Do you want to come?" And by asking me that, that was like the one thing that was like my jump in moment. And I just thought of it. It was such a glorious memory to me to remember that something about putting coats into bags to go to where they were going to go was the moment where I felt engaged. So in scripture, we have this reading from Romans. Welcome one another, therefore, just as Christ has welcomed you, for the glory of God. And I think that that goes also with the story I was just telling, because it was in noticing that the work of the kingdom, the work of welcoming people, of caring for people, for caring for one another, isn't just work for the people that are already there, but it's for the people that are new to your community to be engaged and connected with everything that is happening. It's the better way to invite them to really see the depth of your community and decide if that is a place where they belong to. So as they come on, you're going to prepare your grounds. And another thing that's really important to notice in this is that you may identify, as we are going through all of this, that these are not areas that fall within your level of control or expertise. And so it would be really important to also note that it might not be helpful to the process to show up in your church's office on Monday morning with a list of things that they need to address right away. I invite you to consider which of these items would have the most impact within your congregation, and then how you can partner with the people in leadership there, with your vestry, with your sexton, with your priest in doing the work together. So you're going to prepare your grounds. You're going to look around and make sure that everything is tightened up on your walkways, that there are not trip hazards, that the mats are laid flat. All of the areas of your grounds that people will be coming through are prepared. You're going to prepare your team. And that doesn't just mean your clergy and your sexton and your office manager. Those are the people in your congregation who will also welcome people into the space, who will at the peace come over and say hello, who will ask how they found the church, who will say, "Oh, you're friends with Chris Tumulty? He's great. He tells me all about all the best barbecue shows." You're going to prepare your materials. You're going to make sure that the bulletins are there for everyone. I always say, like, one of the things that I think is a great thing to notice in the pews is there something for people to write with? How many times have you noticed people like fumbling through their purses looking for something, an implement to write with in there because they want to make a note on the bulletin or something that stood out for them? So like, make sure there's some pencils in your pews. That's a great one to do. And then also you're going to prepare your own personal invitation. And I'm sure in this moment you're like, "What, Charlotte? We've already invited these people." But no, what you're preparing is your invitation for them to engage with the worship service, to engage with your church, and to engage with continuing to participate. So you, before you get there, you want to think about like, what are the things that I can highlight for people here? Not from a salesman standpoint. Nobody needs a game show host, but an authentic welcome and an authentic invitation will help people to realize the value of what is there and to see themselves in that place. Signs of welcome. Restrooms, nursery, hearing assistance, these are all things that congregations all across of our diocese have. But knowing where to get to them and how to get them is really important. Chris talked about this before too. I particularly think the hearing assistance one is important. And I would encourage you, if you haven't checked it out yet, that St. Dunstan's has a new accessibility page on their website that might be inspirational to you, because they really have identified and continue to identify ways in which they want to broaden their offering to make sure that more and more people can be supported in their congregation. Maybe that isn't your area of expertise, but in seeing what they are doing there, it might make you think of something within your own congregation that would be really good to tell the story of to people that are coming. Make sure they know where the restrooms are, make sure they know where the nursery is, and make sure that they know, if they can't hear, how it is that they can be better supported in engaging with that. Other than those signs of welcome, I'm wondering, and you don't have to say it aloud, but I wonder if there are other things that you can identify in your own space. Just think about it for a moment, a way in which you welcome people specific to your context that would be a great thing to highlight on Invite a Friend to Church Sunday. And as you percolate on that, let's think about that team. Your team can include your welcome table volunteers. It includes your ushers. It includes your hospitality people, the people that put out your coffee and your delicious donuts. Your vestry, especially on Invite a Friend to Church Sunday, it's going to be important to get as many members of your leadership team to commit to being there too, because those are people who can also help you create the engagement and the welcome. And then these are all people that might be expected, but you also want to make sure that you include in your team people who are active in the ministries that you participate in. So if you are involved in Ultra Guild and you are bringing a friend who has a love language that is like caring for beautiful things and making spaces wholesome, you want to make sure that there are other members of your Ultra Guild team there so that you can say, oh, you know what's one of my favorite things I do? I love preparing the altar for worship. And I do it with my friend Susie. Let me introduce you to Susie so you guys can chat. And that way people have like shared conversation partners beyond you. You're broadening their circle and you're creating engagement through that. So what I would love for you guys to do, we're going to send you back into a breakout with a partner, is not think about the things that aren't going as well as they possibly could have. All of us can tell the story of something in our congregation that we long for and that we wish for that we are not doing, because there are only so many people and only so many volunteers. But if you pause on that thought for a moment and instead think about, what is it that we do well? And instead, it says or there, but I'm going to switch it to and today. And what is it that we are doing well but could easily improve? And that's your item that you really want to focus on for welcome a friend to church, to invite a friend to church Sunday. What are you doing well? And what could you easily improve to create engagement when people get there? Have a good conversation.
All right, friends, we're going to talk about what we do with retention. You've done the good work of inviting more people to your church. How do you keep them coming back? So in the chat, how do you build a bridge from welcome to belonging? Think about your own experience. You've been welcomed into a space, a new space of some kind. You've already been asked that question in the chat, but when did you belong to that new community or that new space? Offer some thoughts in the chat about what it felt like when you actually crossed the threshold of being a visitor to belonging to a new community. And if you were at Easter Invitation, we covered this, but it's worth revisiting. We're going to take a look at some data that's been put together by Springtide Research. You can Google that if you're interested in this. But they talk about 3 different levels to move from welcome to belonging. The first one, the level is I am noticed. Level 2 is I am named. And level 3 is I am known. This is the point where you actually become, you belong to that community. You feel a part of that community. So the first level is, have you invited them to the first thing and then the second thing? That means that you've actually noticed them. It wasn't just somebody that came and went. They're not just kind of a consumer cog in the system. You noticed them. And you saw them, they were invited to the first thing, and then you've invited them to the second thing and the third thing. But you invite them back. A lot of our congregations will stop with that first welcome and forget to welcome someone back the next time. And so helping think about this with your church. How do you do this personally with someone after you've brought someone to church? Invite them to another thing. It doesn't even have to be worship. It could be inviting them to a potluck or to a service activity or a social of some kind. But inviting them to something else makes them feel noticed, that you recognize that they were there and that you want them back, which is related to that second level of being named. Do you actually know their name? And do they know that you've missed them when they're gone? So after that first invitation and they don't come back with you to church the next Sunday or the next month, do you reach out to them and say, hey, we missed you at church. We hope you'll come back sometime. This doesn't have to be framed in a way to induce guilt or shame on somebody for not showing up at church, but in a way of genuinely, relationally missing somebody that wasn't at church that Sunday. So this is something that for me it highlights a hang-up of mine. I never forget a face. I will still walk through a grocery store in the community that I went to high school in and see people and nudge my wife and say, I knew that person in my sophomore year of high school or whatever it is. I never forget a face. And I am terrible with names. Absolutely the worst with names. You can tell me your name is Brenda and I'll think it's Bob next time I see you. It's just, I am really terrible with names. So what I often will do is I will introduce myself and someone says, hi, my name is Brenda. And I'll say like, Brenda, I am terrible with names. I may forget it, but I will not forget you. And when I see Brenda again and I've completely forgotten her name and think it's Bob or something else, I just simply say that like, hey, we met last month. I'm so glad you're back. I am terrible with names. I do not remember your name. And so this doesn't mean that you have to have a little journal, your little evangelism journal in your pocket where you keep track of everybody's names. But it does mean that we make sure we recognize people and we try to make the effort. We demonstrate that we are interested in getting to know them, that we miss them when they're gone, and we want to know them because our names have so much to do with our identity, with who we are, right? This is also important to how people share their names. Now, my name is Jason. And so there are a lot of people that after the first invite, they would like to naturally shorten it so we can feel all chummy. And they'll say like, hey, Jay. And I do not like that. If I will let people know, my family calls me Jay, not you. So I can be just as guilty of that. I can easily shorten other people's names. If someone says my name is Anthony, call them Anthony. Don't call them Tony. If they say their name is Tony, don't call them Anthony. So use the names that people give you when you meet with them. Refer to them as they've asked to be referred to. And give yourself a break if you're bad with names like me. So let's go to that. Did you have a question, Gerald?
No, I was saying I'm very bad with names too. So you're not on.
Well, I get an extra ding for absolutely butchering your name the first class. So
okay.
Don't feel bad. So let's talk about this level 3, the I am known phase. So this really, in our congregations, when somebody is actually moving to this third level and belonging to a congregation, feeling as if it is theirs, they've made a relationship with more than just you, the person that's invited them. Or if they saw an ad from the church on Facebook or something and came, it's not just that first person they've connected with. As Charlotte was pointing out to us, they've now made connections with other people. She was talking about that person on Altar Guild that invites a friend because they like doing things detailed and well and creating ambiance and space. And have they met the other people on the Altar Guild that love to polish silver or brass? If it's somebody that has a child, have you introduced them to other parents that they've had a chance to get to know? We actually begin to belong to a new community when we actually have a relationship connection with more than one person. So that goes back again to what Charlotte was saying. Are we taking the opportunity to introduce them to other people that may have different connection points? So let's review a few tips to take from this. Think about the invite that you can make for the next event. So if we're talking about invited friend to church season this fall, obviously there are things like the Advent activities that'll be going on at your church, whether that's La Posadas or Advent book studies or whatever it may be, and obviously Christmas services. But what else at your church? Think about this. You've been a part of your church for a while. Think about the coming fall season. What else happens during the fall and going into the winter at your church? Drop us a line in the chat. What else could you invite someone back to? If your church is mobilized to invite friends to church during Invite a Friend to Church Sunday, what's the next big opportunity for you to invite people back to? Is there a big service project? Is there a big social opportunity? Or is it another sacred experience, another worship service of some kind? So think about that. What are other things that you can invite people to? And then let's revisit that third part of coming into belonging, of making a warm handoff, connecting people to other areas of interest that you've heard about, following up with the clergy so that there's an opportunity for your priest or your deacon to meet with that individual, and being consistent with this, not just on the Invite a Friend to Church Sunday section or season, but year round. How can you build this into a practice? I think I've shared this with you all before. If not, I attended a church one time, was on leadership of a church that our welcome team didn't have a tag that said, I'm a member of the welcome team. They may have had a name tag on that they had their first name on, but they didn't have a tag that said that I'm a part of the welcome team, or I'm an usher, or I'm a part of hospitality. But what they always made a good practice of is going to people that were in the congregation. If they didn't recognize them, didn't mean that they knew they were a visitor or not. They may have been someone that went to the 8 o'clock service versus the 10 o'clock service typically. They would always go up to somebody that they didn't know and say, I don't think I've met you before. I'm Jason. Is this your first time here, or have you been here before? And what was interesting is there was a team of 5 people in this church, of about 100 or so people every Sunday at worship, that were part of the welcome team that had this as their primary practice, which is to connect with people that they didn't recognize and make sure that they had the opportunity to get connected, to fill out a welcome card or connect with somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. Because there wasn't a designation that they were a part of the welcome ministry or anything on their card, it became a part of the culture of that congregation, meaning that people just assumed that's what folks did at that church, was they just made sure they went and introduced themselves to people that they didn't know. And so what happened is that on Sundays, you would get to passing of the peace, and everybody was walking up to different people and saying, I don't think I've met you before. And so there's an opportunity here to build a culture of welcome and invitation if we are consistent with the practices that we use. So those are our best suggestions for you, friends, about the invitation to practice. As lay a practice invitation, a practice sharing the good news of God through your congregation. Chris and I are going to open it up to some questions and comments now at this point. So if there are things that you've got that you would like to talk with us about, I know that we're kind of going long today, but we want to make sure that we have some time to engage with you around your questions or comments that you have. And then we'll have a few closing words for you. But it looks like Rhonda's got something. You want to unmute yourself, Rhonda, and share?
Now that we've had this last session, I understand your logic in certifying, because well, evangelism, we should all be evangelists. We
That's
don't have to
right.
be certified. But no, you're talking about being a little more aware and deliberate and strategic within the whole church.
Absolutely.
What do we have to do to get there, to get that certification? And you've told me that this is recorded, but do we have these slides and things in the handbook or other tools that we can take to our team back at our church?
Absolutely. I don't have the slide decks uploaded, but I will upload all of the slide decks from our sessions along with the recordings of each of the sessions to the Evangelism 101 page. So everything will be there, and all of the resources that we've covered will be linked to there so that you can find those tools. And I think that'd be fantastic if each and every one of you took these tools back to your congregation and taught others. There's no reason why Chris and I need to be the dispensers of this information. Take it freely. That's why it's on the website for free. Take it and share with other people. Regarding the licensing as a lay evangelist, there are some other steps to getting licensed. Obviously, you have to be nominated by your clergy and your vestry or bishops committee. And then there are some other steps that no matter what lay license you're pursuing, there are some other things that we want you to do. There's a background check and some other things, because if the bishop's going to be saying, I'm standing this person up as a lay person in the diocese that is qualified to be a leader in this area, there are some checks and balances there. So Chris just shared in the chat all of the details. You can go to the link that he shared there. There's a link to the 101 page that has everything. And from there, there's also a link to the lay licensing page.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Siobhan.
Siobhan, you're muted.
Yeah, she's
My
trying to.
mouse is
You got it.
dying.
There
I'm
you go.
afraid my mouse is dying. I want to share something that is from a different church. It's from Billy Graham's church from 1,000,000 years ago, but I just want to tell you it's really useful. It's called the Lighthouse Prayer Journal, and you can still get them on Amazon it came out in 2000. Listen to this. It has the name, the relationship, address, phone, children, personal notes, praying for, caring about, and sharing with. It's all laid out there, and it's the best place to keep all of your stuff whenever
that's
you're
great.
really keeping track of people.
That's a
Siobhan,
great
say
resource.
the name again, please.
It's called the Lighthouse Prayer Journal, Being a Lighthouse to Others, the Lighthouse Movement. And I don't think it is Graham, but I think it was something related to that crowd. So, but it just, I haven't seen anything like it before since, and I have 3 of them. I keep buying them online on eBay just because it's really useful.
So I just dropped the title. And
Okay,
we're not
thank
sure if
you.
it's Billy Graham or not, but you can Google that and find one. Just as a funny side note, when I went to originally type in Lighthouse Prayer Journal,
Yeah,
it got auto-corrected as the Hot House Prayer Journal. So
I love it.
I don't know what that prayer journal is like, but you know, thank you. I love sharing the resources. That's fantastic. Anything else? Any other questions?
I have a question that I've noticed when I have brought people into church. The thing that confuses them and even embarrasses them is when we all go to the rail for communion. And I realized that was something I needed to be explaining ahead of time. But on the other hand, it's sort of overwhelming if they are Protestant or hadn't been churched for so many years that, you know, they'll just sit in the pew and watch it all happen and not even realize that they can go for a blessing or what have you. And part of that is the priest. When our priest recognizes there's a lot of new people, like on Easter or Christmas, he'll explain all of that. But just on a normal Sunday, or because a friend's visiting from out of state or something, you might bring them to church. And I've just, even my most religious friends sometimes are very taken aback by the formality of our Episcopal services. And Grace Church is a very low church. We don't have a lot of formalities. So I can imagine that those of you who are in larger churches, that's a big deal.
Yeah. You know, honestly, whether it's the snake belly lowest congregation in the Episcopal Church or the highest of Anglo-Catholic, I have seen congregations of all shapes and sizes and practice culture and give some guidance during worship, especially when it comes to Holy Eucharist, so that people have some sense as to how to engage. I know that in some congregations, that's not common practice. That's reserved for Easter or Christmas. But there are some congregations, again, some are big, some are small, that's their practice every week, is to say, here's what we're doing now, and here's how you're invited to participate. I routinely visited an Eastern Orthodox church many years ago. And it was actually kind of my gateway drug to the Episcopal Church. I loved the liturgy. I just had no idea how it all worked. But I knew very well going into that service from my Eastern Orthodox friend, I was not welcome to come take Eucharist in that tradition.
Oh, yeah, the Roman Catholic Church can sometimes be that way too.
And yet it was so hospitable, and how they told me that I wasn't welcome to come to take Eucharist, but was every Sunday approached with blessed bread and asked if I would like blessed bread. And so I think there are ways for every congregation, no matter its culture, to make sure that it does whatever it can to welcome people. I know some congregations are really reluctant to do something like an instructed Eucharist, where people, it's explained throughout the Eucharist that's going on. Some congregations, essentially every week is almost an instructed Eucharist. Here's where we're going next and what we believe God is doing through this. But every congregation could say, if you are new to this tradition, it's okay, just follow along. All the instructions are in your bulletin or in the prayer book. And if you have any questions, feel free to look to your neighbor. And as that person's neighbor, we can all use our hand and point in the bulletin or the prayer book, here's where we're at, here's what's going on. And that just signals to somebody that even if they're an outsider, even if they're completely unfamiliar with what's going on, somebody wants them to be included as much as they are willing and able to be.
I also think that, it's an opportunity for us to name that we do a lot of weird stuff in church. We stand up, we sit down, we kneel or stand. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that's a little weird for newcomers that might seem off-putting because they don't know what's happening. But that's also an opportunity for you to talk with your friend or neighbor after church about what they thought about these things. What did they think about communion? What did they think about the service? What felt weird or comforting to them, and have dialogue about it, right?
Absolutely. Great point, Chris. Yeah. Let people have those questions afterwards. That's a great point. All right. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the lay licensing process, and that you can go to the website and find that information. Just a couple other things I want to share with you all before we let you go, and sorry for keeping you long. But everything for Invite a Friend to Church season is available at edsd.org/invite. One of the greatest resources that Chris put together here is at the very top of the page, and it has the Sunday invitation checklist. Now, this is our last class, so I can't assign you any homework, but I would strongly encourage you to go download the checklist and find a time to meet with the leadership of your church and start to think about how you can prepare for Invite a Friend to Church Sunday. In fact, I be a leader in that effort in your congregation to get ready for Invite a Friend to Church Sunday and your congregation. As I just mentioned, we're also going to make sure that everything from this class, including the slide deck, Rhonda, will be up at Evangelism101 on our website. So that's edsd.org/evangelism. evangelism101. Everything will be up there. And there are even more resources available at the evangelism page. If you just take out the Evangelism 101 and just go to the evangelism page, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's there too. Other resources, other books, etc., that you can find on that page. Okay. So friends, this has been fun. You all are fantastic evangelists. I loved reading your stories. I loved hearing about your experiences and sharing God's good news through your own life with other people. I just want you to express one thing that we talked about at the very beginning. This is not about some innate supernatural giftedness. It is a spiritual practice, the work of sharing God's good news. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. There's no sense in being anxious or angsty about this practice. Just be exactly who God made you. Share the story that God gave you, and God will do good things with it. So let's go ahead and close as we've done in the past with a word of prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Lord Jesus Christ, you stretched out your arms of love on the hard wood of the cross, that everyone might come within the reach of your saving embrace. So clothe us in your spirit, that we, reaching forth our hands in love, may bring those who do not know you to the knowledge and love of you, for the honor of your name. Amen.